So Ohio State's closing out non-conference play with an in-state opponent, Ohio, who is 1-1. They lost to Rutgers in week 1. They probably should have won that game, but they did lose that game on the road to Rutgers, and then they beat West Virginia at home. So they're 1-1. They've played two FBS teams, two Power 4 teams. Ohio State's only played one, and they both have one Power 4 win right now. Ohio also has a quarterback by the name of Parker Navarro, who has been their quarterback the last 2 seasons. I'm Steven, that's Stefan, that's Andrew. Andrew, we're going to start with you because this is your alma mater. The first question is, are you actually going to be in the press box, or will you be somewhere in the student section shirtless with all green and white on?
Well, I mean, this would be a fun week to do like a man on the street interview where I go like interview people in the crowd.
So when you don't hear from Andrew Gillis in the press box, that's why. Andrew, what do you think Ohio State can learn from Ohio in its final non-conference game that might apply to how things might go in the Big Ten?
Well, I think, defending a quarterback that can make plays on the run, like Ryan Day spoke pretty highly, I thought, of Parker Navarro. Like typically I've been here since the beginning of the 2023 season, and they've played lower level teams. They played Western Kentucky.
Yep.
They've played teams that have really not been up to par. They played Akron to start the year last year, and you don't hear Ryan Day get out there and necessarily, Mike Gundy his opponent, where he kind of says some stuff and gives them extra motivation. But Ryan, in those weeks, typically talks about, we got to focus on us. We got to do what's good for us. We got to focus on what we can control and blah, blah, blah. And basically that's code for we're going to beat the snot out of these guys. He was pretty effusive in his praise, I thought, for Parker Navarro, specifically naming him. I think he got asked specifically about him, so that's probably why. But a couple of times he brought up the quarterback kind of moving on the run, making plays off script, and that is something that I think Ohio State really is going to get a nice look at here, because there's going to be people, like if you've watched Ohio play against Rutgers and West Virginia, and probably this Saturday against Ohio State, you're going to look at this and go, that kid might be able to start at like Rutgers. Like that kid might be able to start. I know Maryland has a good quarterback this year, but like at Minnesota. Like why is this kid not at Boston College right now? Like that is the type of quarterback that you're talking about here. So I think when people watch this game, I think it is important to know, this is not just a, there's a talent mismatch at everywhere on the field. But Parker Navarro is going to be able to teach Ohio State's defense some things about keeping gap discipline, keeping lane discipline, because Parker can move and he's going to run around and he's going to try and make a lot of plays on his own. So if the play breaks down, which I'm guessing it will a lot on Saturday night, and he rolls out, it's important that, Davison Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews don't break off of their guy. If they're in man coverage, you can't break off of it. If you're in zone, you have to stick to your zone. Defensive ends, you got to maintain your rush lanes, because if you break inside, because, Caden Curry thinks he has a sure sack, Parker Navarro is going to scramble and get 7. Like, this is a good week, I think, for Ohio State to stay disciplined. Discipline might be the name of the week, the word of the week here, because if you do that against Parker Navarro, Ohio State's going to win this game pretty much no matter what by multiple scores. I think the line's 32.5 at this point? Like, they're going to win by a lot. But Parker Navarro and Ohio's offense is probably going to test you a little bit, because, again, they did hang 30. I know it's Rutgers, but on a Big Ten opponent that's probably going to go bowling. They beat West Virginia at home. They're going to be able to present some challenges that Ohio State can get ready for moving forward when they have a bye week after that, and then they play Washington.
What do you want to learn this week? What can Ohio teach Ohio State?
Well, it's kind of along those same lines of, originally when Andrew was kind of describing some of the things that I was thinking about earlier going into this matchup, I wasn't too concerned, because I'm thinking to myself, well, if Ohio State's defensive ends were able to control the rush lanes and kind of, keep Arch Manning in the pocket, I'm not too worried about them doing it against Parker Navarro. I think Arch Manning has the mobility as well to do it. But the thing is, you're doing it now against a guy who's played a lot of football, right? Arch Manning was young. We saw him freeze in the pocket at times. Didn't really know what to do in certain moments. And now you're doing it against a veteran guy who's been there, done that. And even if it, I'm not saying Ohio's going to put up 40 points because they have a veteran quarterback, but they have a guy who won't or shouldn't get rattled by the moment, regardless of who the opponent is on the other side. And I think that's what's going to test them. So it's it's doing what you did against Texas, but doing it with a quarterback who's kind of been there, done that, seen some things. So I think that's kind of the big test, because there are some veteran quarterbacks on Ohio State's schedule. So as well as they played against Texas, I think that's part of it too. Is like, okay, what does that look like when you have a veteran quarterback who's not scared of the moment, as it looked like at times Arch Manning was? And I think Parker Navarro's part of that test. You look at Drew Aller down the road, not the most mobile guy, but again, another veteran quarterback on the roster or on the schedule. So there's going to be opportunities, down the stretch of the season where you look back on this Ohio game and say, oh, okay, there were holes that teams like Washington or Penn State were able to exploit. Or, wow, Ohio State did so well against Ohio, it's going to be really tough for teams like Penn State or Washington to do something down the road, or even Michigan down the road. So I think there's plenty that we can learn from this defense, and I think that's kind of the area we talk about here, because before we started recording, Steven, I brought up the point of going into Grambling. It was like, all right, the offense needs maybe not a get-right game, because I don't think the performance against Texas was poor. It was just kind of like the game,
it wasn't who they were always going to be.
Right. Like, they were not going to be that every game. Texas that game kind of dictated the way you were going to call plays. Okay, now let's see it against Grambling, where you kind of just let loose and see what this offense looks like with Julian saying. Now it's like, all right, we know what the offense can do, and they, based on what Rutgers was able to do, Ohio State should have no issue moving the ball against this Ohio defense. But can Ohio State's defense now show up again against a pretty tough opponent? It's kind of like the reverse of the Grambling State game of, okay, defense, which, by the way, defense pitched a shutout. Okay, so like us ignoring them, they still did their job. They still pitched a shutout against Grambling State. But now it's like, all right, now we're going to look at you again a little more closely and analyze everything you do, and I'm interested to see how that pans out.
I just like that Ohio State's 3 non-conference opponents all featured mobile quarterbacks at different stages, right? Arch Manning, obviously, probably the highest ceiling of the bunch, but also the least amount of experience of the bunch. Parker Navarro is the happy medium there, because he's a really good quarterback, got a lot of experience, but there's also a ceiling into what he is going to be. And then Grambling's quarterback, he got out of the pocket a little bit, made some things shake here. Arvell Reed's spy. He did it against Texas and it worked. I'm wondering if he's going to do it here. And the reason why I love the fact that they're playing these mobile quarterbacks is their first Big Ten game is against a mobile quarterback, Damon Williams. Ohio also has a wide receiver by the name of Chase Hendricks, who is the only wide receiver who gets the ball. There was a guy last year, he's now on the Colts, whose name is escaping me right now, but he was in that position last year as their 1,000-yard receiver. Sound familiar? Washington's got Damon Williams, small little guy who can run around but also throw it a little bit. Denzel Boston. That's his number one weapon. So I just think this is a good way for the defense to not have to go against a scout team and get ready to play Washington, who's like that. Get ready to play Penn State, who Drew Aller can run a little bit. We'll see with Bryce Underwood. We just haven't seen enough from him. Altmaier, not as much of a runner, but there's some good quarterbacks on Ohio State's schedule this year. And I think Parker Navarro, if you rank the top 6 quarterbacks on the schedule coming up, I think he's on that list, even if the talent around him isn't necessarily going to get to a win. So I just think good way to get ready for Big Ten for Ohio State. And defensively, coming off of last week where, yes, they pissed the shutout. Grambling had one legitimate drive, and it ended because their kicker is the Browns kicker, apparently. And it was kind of like a we can do what we want day. And now they can get back to the structure and game planning towards the future. Get the text 614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial, $3.99 after that. And go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. We'll continue this conversation there as Ohio State prepares to play Ohio in its final non-conference game on Saturday in the Shoe. I'm Steven. That's Stefan. That's Andrew. See you later.